You're not stuck. You're distracted, and the moment you stop explaining yourself, stop trying to be seen, heard, validated by everyone around you, you'll feel peace for the first time in a long time. That's why you need to hear this entire message. Because this is where everything begins to shift, not when you chase, not when you shout, but when you go quiet and start moving in silence. Silence is not weakness, it's not retreat, it's not giving up. In fact, silence is one of the strongest moves you can make in a world where everyone's screaming for attention. You want to know who's actually winning. It's not the loudest voice in the room. It's the one who's moving quietly, intentionally, with discipline. When you stay silent, you remove the need to constantly justify yourself. You stop reacting to every opinion, every comment, every judgment. And suddenly, you take back control. You stop letting other people's noise define your direction, because silence creates space, and in that space, something amazing happens. You finally hear yourself. Not the self that's trying to keep up, not the self that's people, pleasing or over-explaining or trying to stay relevant. You hear the version of you that's focused, grounded, determined. The version that doesn't need to be validated because they know exactly who they are and where they're headed. We live in a world where everyone's documenting every step of their journey, what they're eating, where they're going, what they're working on. And look, that's fine if it fuels them. But if you're constantly putting your progress on display for likes or applause, you're not building for you. You're building for an audience, and that's not sustainable. What happens when the likes stop, when no one's watching? Does your motivation crumble? Because that's the test, the real growth. It happens in silence, when no one's clapping, when it's just you, the work, and the discipline to keep showing up. That's where strength is born, that's where focus sharpens. Silence protects your energy, it guards your intentions, it shields your progress, because when people don't know your every move, they can't question it, sabotage it, or distract you from it. You're not giving them access to your momentum, and that means you're free. Free to change your mind, free to evolve, free to work without outside pressure. People won't always understand your silence, and that's okay. It's not their job to understand. It's your job to protect your peace, your vision, and your goals, because not everything needs to be announced. Not every seed needs to be shown before it grows. You don't pull a plant out of the soil every day just to check if it's sprouting. You let it do its thing in the dark, in the quiet, in the dirt, and then one day it blooms. That's what happens when you stay silent and focus on the work. Some of the most powerful transformations you'll ever experience will happen privately. You'll outgrow people, environments, habits, and you won't have to explain a thing. Your silence becomes your power because it puts the spotlight on your actions, and actions, they speak way louder than any words ever will. Think about it. When you're quiet, people start to wonder. They get curious, they sense the shift, and eventually they'll see the results. But by then, it won't even matter what they think, because you'll already be living in alignment. You'll already be becoming the person you were meant to be. Not because you told the world about your plan, but because you stuck to it while the world was busy talking. Glow up happens when you stop giving the world your constant attention and start turning all that energy inward. That's when everything starts to change. You see, people spend so much time trying to be liked, trying to be followed, trying to prove something. But the people who really transform, they go the other way. They stop performing for the world and start showing up for themselves. That's where the power lies. That's where the shift begins. When you focus on yourself, your habits, your mindset, your peace, you begin to move differently. You carry yourself with a quiet confidence, not because everything's perfect, but because you're finally building something real inside of you. Self-focus doesn't mean selfishness, it means responsibility. It means deciding that your energy is too valuable to waste on things that drain you. You're not here to convince anyone of your worth. You're here to realize it for yourself. And that means cutting off distractions, even if they come in the form of people you love, places you're used to, or routines that used to comfort you. Because growth never comes without discomfort. You want to grow. Then you have to outgrow, that's the deal. You have to outgrow the habits that kept you stagnant, the thoughts that kept you small, and the environments that kept you stuck. And that starts with turning all your focus inward. Start asking, what do I need right now to become the version of me I see in my dreams, not tomorrow, not next year now. When you do that, when you choose discipline over distraction, you'll see it, you'll feel the shift. You'll wake up with purpose instead of anxiety. You'll stop comparing your journey to someone else's because you're too focused on building your own. And that glow, it won't be something you fake. It'll radiate from within. People will start to notice, and they'll ask what changed. They'll assume it's something external, something they can copy, but they won't get it because they didn't see the nights you chose the gym over the party. They didn't see you journaling instead of venting. They didn't see you saying no to comfort and yes to consistency. That's what self-focus looks like. It's not glamorous, it's not loud, but it's powerful. You have to understand, no one's coming to do the work for you. No one's going to hand you peace, discipline, clarity, or success. You have to choose it. You have to build it. And it all begins the moment you stop looking outward and start pouring that same time, that same effort, that same intensity back into you, not for validation, not for revenge, but because you've decided that you are finally worth the investment. That's the glow up. That's when the world doesn't need to hear about your comeback. They'll see it without you saying a single word. Your money, your time, even your talents. Because without energy, you can't use any of those things to their full potential. And yet, people waste it every single day like it's unlimited. They hand it out to drama, to overthinking, to people who drain them, to arguments that go nowhere, to scrolling for hours through things that don't matter. And then they wonder why they're tired all the time, why they can't focus, why they feel stuck. The answer is simple. You're leaking energy. You're giving it away to everything and everyone but yourself. You wouldn't leave your front door wide open with your wallet on the table, right? So why are you leaving your mind, your peace, your focus unprotected? Every single thing you do either deposits energy into your system or drains it. The conversations you have, the content you consume, the way you talk to yourself, it all adds up. If you keep pouring energy into things that don't give anything back, you'll burn out. You'll start to live in a constant state of depletion, and that version of you can't show up at 100%. That version of you can't chase your goals, can't build anything meaningful, can't even enjoy the little moments because you're just surviving. That's not the life you're meant to live. You're not here to be exhausted. You're here to be intentional. So start paying attention to your energy like it's a bank account, because it is. Every yes you say to something that doesn't align with you is a withdrawal. Every time you say no to something that protects your peace, that's a deposit. And over time, those choices shape your entire life. You don't need to explain it to people. You don't owe anyone your energy. Not everyone gets access to the deepest parts of you just because they ask. You have to earn that access. You have to protect your power, because when you do, you start showing up differently. You stop wasting your mornings with anxiety, your afternoons with gossip, your nights with regret. You get intentional, you become precise with your focus, and things start to click, not because you're doing more, but because you've stopped doing what drains you. You get one shot at this life, one chance to make the most of your potential. And you can't afford to waste it being tired from the wrong things. It's not about being busy. It's about being aligned. The more you protect your energy, the more you attract people and opportunities that match it. You don't have to chase anymore. You just have to choose wisely who gets your time, who gets your attention. What thoughts are you letting rent space in your head? Those aren't small questions. Those are everything. Because your energy, when focused, when guarded, when used with purpose, that's your power. The applause, the likes, or the constant approval, and the moment you truly believe that, your entire life shifts. Validation is one of the most addictive traps out there. It feels good for a moment, a compliment, a like, a nod of approval, but it fades just as quickly as it arrives. And then what? You chase it again, you post again, you ask again, you explain yourself again, and slowly, without realizing it, you start to live for other people's reactions instead of your own truth. That's the trap. It's not obvious, it's not loud, but it keeps you stuck, second, guessing yourself, trying to meet expectations that were never yours to begin with. The problem with validation is that it's never permanent. You have to keep earning it. You have to keep performing. You start to make decisions not based on what's best for you, but based on what others will think. You shrink your voice. You delay your moves. You trade your freedom for a fleeting moment of approval. And all the while, you lose connection with your own voice, your own gut, your own power. When you're constantly seeking validation, you never get the chance to truly see what you're capable of without the noise. You can't grow in the direction that's right for you because you're too busy twisting yourself into what others want you to be. There is so much peace that comes when you detach from the need to explain yourself, when you realize not everyone is going to understand your journey, and that's okay. You don't need to convince them. You don't need to post about every win, every plan, every next step. You don't need to prove anything to anyone but yourself. And silence, that's your weapon. When you go quiet, when you stop asking for permission and start moving with purpose, people notice. Not because you told them, but because the results start to speak. And they speak louder than anything you could ever say. The truth is, most people aren't even paying as much attention as you think. They're too wrapped up in their own lives, their own insecurities, their own need for validation. So stop living for their opinions. Stop holding back your progress because you're waiting for someone to clap for you. You don't need a round of applause. You need commitment. You need clarity. You need discipline. The right people will feel your shift without you having to explain a single word. The wrong ones, they were never going to see your worth anyway. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand. Let them guess what you're up to. Because while they're distracted by their assumptions, you'll be building quietly, strongly, relentlessly, and that's where the freedom lives, not in being liked, but in being aligned with who you really are, with or without anyone's approval. You're on top of the world, until it disappears, and it will disappear. That's the truth most people don't want to hear. Motivation is like a spark. It lights you up for a moment, gives you a glimpse of what's possible, but it's not enough to get you to the finish line. What will? Discipline. Discipline is quiet, consistent, often boring, but it's the real reason people succeed. The ones who win, they're not always the most talented or the most inspired. They're the ones who show up when no one's watching. When it's hard, when they're tired, when they don't feel like it. They don't wait for the perfect mood or the perfect plan. They get up and do the work, regardless of how they feel. You can't rely on feeling good every day to build the life you want. Because some days you're not going to feel like it. Some days you'll be exhausted. Some days you'll be distracted. Some days you'll feel completely out of sync. That's when discipline has to take over. Discipline says, I don't care how I feel. I have a goal. I made a promise to myself, and I'm not breaking it. Discipline isn't flashy. It doesn't need attention. It doesn't scream, but it delivers every single time. It's in the small decisions, waking up early, putting in an extra hour, saying no to temporary pleasure in exchange for long-term reward. That's what builds momentum. That's what builds results. People wait for motivation like it's some kind of miracle. They keep watching videos, reading quotes, listening to speeches, hoping something will finally light that fire for good. But no one tells them the truth. Motivation fades, always. That's not a flaw. That's human nature. What makes you different is what you do when the excitement is gone. Do you quit or do you keep going? Because that's where the real separation happens. Anyone can work when they're inspired, but success doesn't belong to the inspired. It belongs to the disciplined, the person who trains when it's inconvenient, the person who sticks to the plan when no one's clapping, the person who chooses progress over excuses. Discipline also builds trust with yourself. Every time you follow through, even when you don't want to, you prove to yourself that your word means something. And over time, that builds confidence that no one can take from you. You don't need hype. You don't need someone to push you. You become your own source of power, your own engine, your own standard, and that's rare. That's what sets you apart. Not your talent, not your looks, not your background, but your ability to show up day after day when no one's looking and nothing feels exciting. That's where growth happens, in the mundane, in the repetition, in the commitment to becoming who you said you would be. Showy, it doesn't make noise when it enters a room, but it changes everything. That power is silence, not the silence of avoidance or fear, but the silence of strength, the silence of someone who knows what they're building and doesn't need to announce every move. When you start focusing on yourself, when you really start leveling up emotionally, physically, financially, the smartest thing you can do is get quiet, not because you're hiding, but because silence protects your momentum. The more you talk, the more opinions you invite, the more energy you waste, and in a world full of noise, distraction, and constant validation, seeking silence is your shield. It's how you keep your power close. It's how you stay grounded while everyone else is spinning. When you're silent, you're not giving people a chance to interrupt your process. You're not explaining your goals, defending your choices, or inviting opinions from people who haven't earned the right to speak into your life. You're simply moving quietly, intentionally, strategically, and that's what throws people off. They can't figure you out. You're not broadcasting. You're not performing. You're not chasing the spotlight. Yet your absence speaks louder than words ever could. Because silence isn't empty. It's full of discipline. It's full of thought. It's full of preparation. And that's the kind of energy that builds empires. Most people talk too early. They reveal their dreams to people who don't understand them. They share plans that aren't fully formed. And when they hit resistance, when someone doubts them, questions them, or mocks them, they start shrinking. They start doubting themselves. But when you stay silent, you create space to grow. Space to think clearly, space to refine your direction without interference. You protect your mindset, your vision, and your peace, and in that space, real transformation happens. Strategic silence is also about listening to yourself. When you quiet the outside world, you start hearing what really matters, your instincts, your inner voice, your truth. You start noticing patterns, where your energy rises, where it drains, what actually fuels you. You begin making decisions not based on urgency or pressure, but from clarity, and that clarity becomes your compass. It guides your actions, it filters your relationships, it sharpens your focus. Silence isn't passive. It's powerful. It's where real alignment lives. Eventually, people will start to notice the change in you, the glow, the calm, the confidence. They'll wonder what you've been doing, and here's the beauty. You won't have to explain it. Your results will speak. Your presence will speak. The way you move, the way you protect your peace, the way you no longer respond to nonsense. That will say everything. That's the power of strategic silence. It's a commitment to yourself. A decision to protect your energy, refine your path, and speak only when it adds value, not when it feeds ego or invites distraction. So here's the truth. When you finally stop waiting for the world to validate you, when you stop explaining yourself to people who will never understand your vision, and when you stop leaking your energy into distractions that don't serve your growth, everything begins to shift. Not overnight, not in dramatic, flashy ways, but quietly, consistently, powerfully, the moment you start focusing on your own lane and getting clear about what you want, not what they expect of you, is the moment life begins to respond in your favor. Focus is your weapon, silence is your strategy, discipline is your engine, and the people who master those three things, they don't just succeed, they transform. They stop chasing approval and start chasing alignment. They stop performing and start producing. They stop explaining and start evolving. Listen to me. This isn't about isolating yourself. It's about elevating yourself. You're not cutting people off to be cold. You're creating space to build something extraordinary. You're not staying quiet because you're unsure. You're staying quiet because you're busy doing the work. And when you do that, when you fully commit to your own growth, the right people, the right energy, and the right opportunities will find their way to you. You don't have to chase. You just have to choose yourself. So take a deep breath, get honest about where your energy's going, get intentional about who gets access to you, and most importantly, trust the power of your own focus. Everything you want is already on its way, but only if you're ready to stop talking, stop seeking, and start building. Now go. Go become the version of you that no one saw coming, but that you always knew was there, and let your silence speak louder than any words ever could.